Guys, it's me Stark and I'm here today to talk about the Ethiopians. I'll be straight to the point. In the 1v1, the Ethiopians are way too predictable. They will make archers and perhaps try to play archer and mangonels, and I do not see anything else than that. Obviously they do have great weapons and they do scale pretty well, but honestly pikemen is not so helpful, especially as the elos keep climbing, and they are actually going to get heavily punished by most elite skirmisher plays. But where the Ethiopians actually shine and are honestly a top tier civilization is on Arabia or other open land maps on Team Game. On Team Game, the Ethiopian will usually have a partner that will be making cavalry, and this guy making cavalry will basically be able to counter enemy siege, enemy elite skirmisher, so those units are often not so seen here on the team games. For this reason, Ethiopians do shine a lot when they do play on team games. So let's take a look here on this 2v2 Arabia that took place from the Onimaru Brazil Saga. It was the lower bracket semifinals between BL and Gabi versus Dogon and FH. We do see here BL and Brazilian player going for the Ethiopians, and this is one of the most popular build orders here for the Arabia game from the Ethiopians, be it on chicken maps or on deer maps, which is basically keeping only 2 villagers on the wood, going raving into the food until the point that he gets towards the feudal wage. Let's talk about some of the bonus from the Ethiopians. They do receive plus 100 gold and plus 100 food whenever advancing ages. This means that their transition to feudal age and also their fast castles can be pretty good. On Arabia, a very aggressive map, this is more often used for the archer gameplay. And how does that work? Well, basically the Ethiopian can go heavy on wood once he clicks up, because he will already receive 100 food and 100 gold. So the idea here is that Ethiopian will make a barracks and will, as soon as he can, drop new archer ranges, and as you can see, upon reaching feudal age, this guy receives a huge boost on food and gold. So he just needs to slowly add his archer ranges, think about adding towers if necessary, and he would be quite well here for the later stages of the game. So this is how the Ethiopian should be playing and focusing like full on the archers, and this has great synergy with other strengths from the civilization. Ethiopians have the best DPS archer of the game, because all their foot archers do attack 18% faster. So let's make a small analysis here. Take this Mayan for example. Its archers have a 2 reload time, while the Ethiopian has a 1.7 reload time. For this reason, Ethiopian have a big leverage here, and they actually play quite well. Even if they suffer a bit and do not start with their A game here, they can still recover thanks to this bonus. They can even withstand having their food deprived here thanks to their economical bonus, and they can just go for the 18% faster upgrade. Their outposts also have plus 3 line of sight, so and cost no stone. So if you are an Ethiopian, you can actually get a few outposts done, and that will allow you to have a lot more predictability over your opponent's game here. But what we want to do here is basically going full archer. Once in Castle Age, what do we want to do as the Ethiopian? Full archer. What do we want to do on the early Imperial Age as the Ethiopian? Full archer. So basically this is the Ethiopian game supporting and playing together with a cavalry opponent for the team games. Definitely one of the civilizations that are worth playing here on any scenario where you're playing a land map and you actually need to play archers. I think that the very few civilizations can actually compete with the Ethiopians. Alright guys, let's talk now about Ethiopians in 1v1 scenarios. We already talked that the civilization is designed to mass archers, and for this reason is one of the most popular civilizations to play as flank here on team games, because you are always going to have one guy specializing on cavalry and the other specializing on archer. This is the meta. So basically in this scenario the Ethiopian actually shine, but let's take a look here on 1v1. What Ethiopians have so special to be playing here on 1v1? I would say that one, their early feudal age can be quite good. Some Ethiopian players can actually choose to go for the Minotaur opening, which is quite a good one because you can actually use your food, extra food and gold bonus in order to produce the Minotaurs. You don't even need to go for an early lumber camp, but other Ethiopian players might actually go for different openings. I would say that no matter what opening you do as the Ethiopian, there is two things that you should always be looking forward to use on the civilization. The first one of these things is you should always try to wall yourself. You should always try to building, connecting wood lines, connecting your map in order to deny your opponent to raid. On this game, for example, you can see Ethiopian fighting against Huns. They're just fighting with scouts. On this scenario, there's nothing special from each one of the civilizations. The Huns can actually produce a bit faster, but as you can see on the early game, it doesn't make much difference. But the thing is if this game scales, even during the feudal age, Hun will have access to upgrades that the Ethiopian do lack. For example, the bloodlines, which is probably the strongest upgrade for cavalry. If you are a cavalry unit, you must have the bloodlines here. But if you do not, then basically you are just not going to fall behind and not going to follow up the scout line. So the first thing you want to do as the Ethiopian is to fully wall yourself so that you are not going to get raided because you have no units or you have no interest here in getting raided and having to run after enemy units during the game. And the second thing here is that you want to do as the Ethiopian is to play archers. Archers are your core unit, they are your best unit, so it doesn't matter in which timing of the game you are actually going to switch into archers, but you actually want to add an archer range and start making archers as soon as possible. On this game, the Hun player is actually pressuring the Ethiopian heavily here with both scouts and archers, so the Ethiopian haven't fully walled himself, and this will actually put him in a very awkward position. That's exactly what the Ethiopian does not want to have. But it doesn't matter if you do survive. What you need to do immediately after surviving is to start making archers while getting walled. So if I have two tips for the Ethiopian player is one, full wall yourself. Second, play with archers. So far, the Ethiopian was behind in the game and was suffering lots here to fight against the Hun. But as soon as he starts making archers, this means that he will have a better DPS unit. Against the regular archers, the Ethiopian archers will be better. And of course, if you fully wall yourself, you're not going to suffer with ratings or having to deal with faster units such as the light cavalry knights or even the cav archers. Right here, as you can see, the Ethiopian player can actually try to get some fights, and once he's on castle age, he will have access to his full potential, being able to play with the crossbowmen. So you are always aiming to play with the crossbowmen. The problem is, since the Ethiopians are always going to aim to play with this kind of unit, this means that often their opponents are going to play with counter units. For example, in this game, you can see that the Hun player already is playing with Elite Skirmisher, and you can also see that the player is already going for mangonels. So the two biggest issues here for the Ethiopian are both elite skirmishers and mangonels. How do you deal with this strat? Well, it's quite simple. You try to outboom your opponent. Since you are only doing units that does cost wood and gold, you actually want to be massing up those units, and with a minimum amount of farms, you can actually support multiple town centers and boom. So this is the other way to do. So try to harass your opponent's economy using your archers and defend using both mangonels and crossbowmen. This is actually the core game plan here for most of the archer units, be it either Britons, Shu, Ethiopians, Mayans. It doesn't matter which is your civilization, but this is probably how you want to be playing if you are going for an archer civ. Boom, with multiple town centers, develop your economy while actually holding here the ground using both crossbowmen and mangonels. Of course, if you can actually get some leverage on the early stages of the game, you can actually try to make your siege workshop in the center of the map or even forward to pressure your opponent. But if that's not the case, just play here defensive using both archers and mangonels. This composition will actually scale pretty well. You have upgrades for onagers and even siege onagers, and of course, once you are on Imperial Age, I would actually say that the core here for the Ethiopians is to go for their siege. And when I say the siege, I mean go for bomber cannons. They are pretty good. They can actually deal a significant amount of damage to elite skirmishers, and also they can actually be able to harass buildings such as the castles, and try to mass up resources in order to upgrade torsion and guns. Torsion engines actually gives you extra blast radius on the siege, which means that your siege onager and bombard cannons, especially, a lot more damage output. So playing with a core army of arbalests and bombard cannons with upgraded torsion and giants is actually the go-to or the dream composition here for the Ethiopian player. Of course, you will actually want us to add another support unit, and I think that in most scenarios it's actually going to be the halberdier. If you're playing against some cavalry unit, for example the Franks or even the Huns, halberdiers are most likely going to be your go-to unit here, third unit here, or trash unit for the Imperial Age. But the core here is to basically mess up archers, mangonels, and try to boom. If you are playing this way, you are probably playing Ethiopians correctly. So no matter how much your opponent's pressure, as you keep massing archers, it's very difficult to kill you. So basically having a good amount of a good micro here to defend with mangonels, and of course building yourself some leverage into the game. There are some other situational units, for example the Shota warriors that the Ethiopians can also use. The thing about the Shota warriors is they are a glass cannon infantry. They have a high attack, 16 attack we're talking about, but they are absolutely armorless. They have no armor, which means that they are quite weak here on their base stat and only 45 HP. So this unit is actually good to make small ratings and it actually snipe some siege, but if there's ranged unit involved, they are actually not gonna do much. So they are a very situational unit, and honestly sometimes you might actually want to play with a few knights instead. So this is basically the Ethiopian game plan. Let's take a look on another Ethiopian game to see how this goes, because that's exactly how you should be playing as the Ethiopians. Let's go for the game number 2. Right now we did see how the Ethiopians performed against the cavalry unit. So basically the opponent was trying to play elite skirmisher, cavalry, mangonel, and the Ethiopian just did the basic crossman and mangonel. Now let's go for a different scenario. Now this time the Ethiopian player is actually facing down the Mayan. Mayan are another very good archer civilization. So what we have here is actually basically two of the best archer civilizations of the game facing each other in the hands of great players. We have Winchester here playing as the Ethiopians, and we have MBL playing as the Mayans. As you can see, as I said, the two basics here for you to play Ethiopians. One, wall yourself. Winchester did open here with a drush, so he does have like 2 militias that he used to harass his opponent, but he just bought himself some time to fully wall himself. So the point number 1 is already done here. He fully walled himself. Let's go now for the second one, which is playing archers. So far he has fully walled himself. Now he's adding an archer range. Okay, he's playing archers. So that's basically exactly how you want to play and how you want things to go for the Ethiopian. Archers being played here defensive, behind walls. So he's not gonna get raided, and basically he just needs to keep trading archer versus archer against his opponent. Skirmishers are not going to be a threat if you are fully walled, and the enemy archers are actually going to die to your archers because you do shoot 18% faster, meaning that you have extra DPS, and also this allows you to micro a bit better. So in this game, Winchester even fully upgraded his archers with both attack and armor, and he's just gonna focus on that. Honestly, I think that for the Ethiopian, it's just doing this. Just go for the massive amount of archers. If you are getting way too pressured or harassed by the enemy going for skirmishers, there's one thing that you should do, which is using a few cavalry units, scouts during the feudal age and knights later on the castle age if necessary, to harass. So against a small group of skirmishers, a few cavalry units can actually do wonders, because they can actually deal a significant amount of damage to those skirmishers, and if the enemy adds spearmen to try and counter that, well, the spearmen will basically have no value because the archers can just melt them. So a minimum amount of scouts. It's not like, hey, I'm going to play 10 archers, 10 scouts. No, as Ethiopians it should be more something like 14 archers and 3 scouts. If you have an army that is mostly archers with a few scout support, you are actually playing correctly with the civilization. The goal here from the scouts is basically counter skirmishers and deny your opponent to play full skirmishers. This will actually forcing into some hybrid compositions, adding like infantry units and even archers in order to counter your archers. When he does that, well, just focus on massing archers, and of course you guys already know, if you are during the castle age playing as the Ethiopians, you want to be playing full archers. As you can see in this game, 3 archer ranges, and what is the best support unit? Well, the mangonels. So basically you want to be playing full archers, and whenever possible you want to add mangonel. I think that this is one of the best ways to play the Ethiopian. You mass army, you get some small leverage here during the early stages of the game, and then of course you can start making mangonels closer as close as possible from your opponent. If you actually can start making mangonels on the center of the map, back it up by a big amount of archers, this means that it will be very difficult for your opponent to put on some pressure, and that will allow you to slowly develop your economy within your own time. If enemy tries to use a small group of skirmishers, you already know what to do. 1 or 2 knights can actually be of big help. Apart from that, you just want to be harassing your opponent. Another thing that is not so talked about, but I think that is huge for the Ethiopian gameplay, is the use of the outposts. The Ethiopians have a bonus that all the other outposts actually get +3 line of sight, and also they cost no stone, so you can already start adding outposts without even collecting stone, and this is great. For example, in this scenario, Winchester can already be adding outposts without even placing a single villager, and he's not gonna lack enough resources here to later go for town centers. As you can see, these outposts supported by Town Watch actually give you the similar effect of having Town Patrol. Because of that, you can anticipate most of your opponent's movements, and you can also spot where to place your army properly to play. For example, take a look here. Winchester already knows that his opponent has a castle. He knows that he's messing up ranged units on the archer range. He knows that he's trying to get wood here on the back. So with all this information, what's left here for him is to just decide what to do. I would say there's just so much you can do with crossbow and mangonels. So another good tip that I give not only for the Ethiopians but for all the archer civilizations is go to Imperial Age. You are not using a single drop of food here in order to make this army. This means that even a small food economy like 20 farms is actually allow you to mass enough food very soon. So focus on getting gold, focus on getting food, and you are actually going to be able to click up as soon as possible to the Imperial Age. And this is actually another thing that you should actually desire to do as the Ethiopian, to anticipate your Imperial Age, because once you are on Imperial Age, you can actually get access to technologies such as bracer chemistry and access to new weapons like the bombard cannons. And then instead of getting stuck on the Castle Age trading mangonels against skirmishers, you can actually benefit yourself from having a better archer unit here. So that's basically how you want to play as Ethiopian. Wall yourself, play archers, add a few support units, either cavalry or mangonels especially, and you are actually going to have a lot of success. Right here, as you can see, the Ethiopian player is on Imperial Age. He's about to get access to Bracer. Upon getting access to Bracer, you can actually outrange the enemies, and of course, you can actually start gaining back map control. Even if your opponent, for example, is trying to place strategical castles that control goals and harass your town centers, you can already start pushing back. So using this massive amount of archers that is very difficult to kill, combined with this early Imperial Age time, you are basically playing the best out of the Ethiopians. As you can see, a very unidimensional civilization. For this reason, this civilization is not being picked so much. Players already know what counters that. They already know that playing skirmishers is one of the nightmares for the archer civilization. The archer player will only be able to keep trading against skirmishers if he has a technological advantage, for example, to be playing on Imperial Age against Castle Age, or if the guy actually has some siege to backing up. And that's basically it, guys. As you can see, Ethiopian is even struggling here to harass his opponent while he is still on Castle Age. Building multiple castles, booming, massing archers, is not so different from that. I think that apart from that, you should always beware of what your opponent is doing. If your opponent is going for a massive amount of skirmishers, you should always be looking forward to add some siege. I honestly would say that on this game, I'm truly lacking Ethiopian to add a few more mangonels. Against a guy going for massive skirmishers, I would always have at least 2 mangonels here together on my army composition. Right there, Winchester is basically trusting way too much here on the power of his Imperial Age units to harass the opponent and pressure him. So he's fighting from the hill, he's using Imperial Age units, but do not underestimate the enemy skirmishers. They can actually cut off the distance by dodging and try to get some good fights or equal fights. So honestly, one of the biggest weaknesses from the Ethiopians is that without the proper use of the support units, for example, the few amount of siege or cavalry, you were actually going to be in a very awkward position even if you were fighting Imperial Age versus Castle Age, because elite skirmishers can be a pain to deal with. And of course, they also do not cost gold. So as Ethiopian, go for that, go for the support units, upgrade your archers, but do not forget the support units. Even if you are a 3k elo player, without the use of the proper army composition, you might getting stuck and delay your win or lose your advantage and even sometimes lose the game. Of course, those are main skirmishers, they also have the unique upgrade, they're actually shooting one extra arrow, but still, without the proper use of the support units, you are actually going to be in a bad scenario. Another thing that the Ethiopian can actually do once they have a fully upgraded economy, we're not talking about early Imperial Age, we're not talking about 70 views, we're talking about more than 120 views and a lot of technologies here, is to go for a few Shooter Warriors. Shooter Warriors are created very fast and they can actually replace the cavalry line here on this effect of both raiding and dealing with a small amount of skirmishers. For example, this small group of skirmishers will actually melt whenever reaching the Shooter Warriors. Do not mistake yourself, the Shooter Warriors are still gonna suffer if they are lacking the armor, so my suggestion here is not only to add a few Shooter Warriors, but also upgrade their armor. If they can actually catch up the enemy units, they are actually gonna melt them, but without the armor, they are actually gonna suffer a lot. So Arbalest, a few Shooter Warriors, and mostly Siege. I think that by the time the Ethiopian player starts to add bomber cannons, the game can totally change. And there he goes, despite the amount of skirmisher ratings that he's suffering, he's just pushing continuously here, using the archers and using all the information that he has with the outposts. As you can see, placing a few outposts throughout the map as the civilization will basically allow you to play with a revealed map. So abuse this, man. This only costs wood. Abuse from the outposts if you are playing with the Ethiopians. The combination of outposts plus town watch will just give you all this line of sight and will allow you to get good decisions. For example, you can see that your opponent is attacking with like 7 skirmishers on the left. You already know that you just need to send like a single mangonel or even a small group of shuttles to deal with that. And then you just focus here on the siege. I think that that's it for the Ethiopian guys, a very unidimensional but powerful civilization. If you do like to play with archers and if you do like to play with the archer civilizations, this is probably one civilization that you should not be overlooking. Ethiopians are getting less popular as through the years because there were several buffs to the elite skirmishers and also several buffs to the mangonel line, so both elite skirmishers and mangonels got a lot stronger, while the archer upgrades actually got a bit more expensive. For this reason, the archers got lost a bit of their claim here, and the Ethiopians have lost their power. You know, there are of course civilizations that do some things similar to the Ethiopian, but they actually have better options on their tech tree or they have better economical bonus. Nowadays, I would say that players are using the shoe a lot, but in whatever game that you are seeing a player go for the shoe, just think to yourself, okay, whatever this guy is doing, with the exception of the siege rush, can actually be done as the Ethiopian as well.